Hello, you are listening to Dr. Sushma Singh today in Unit 4 Sustainable Development. Let us first introduce the lesson. In this block, after the studying of Unit 1, 2, 3, we have already learned some of the important concepts related to the process of development. By now, we are familiar with the concepts such as progress, change, modernization, development and social development, human development and gender development. We have seen that the concept of development is constantly being critically reviewed, and as a result, our conception of development has been undergoing changes. In the last 4 decades, there is a growing awareness and activism relating to worsening environmental situation at the local, national and global levels. The emerging environmental concerns have once again led to the reconsideration of our conception, goals and strategies of development. As a result of this, our conception of development has experienced a paradigm shift, and this has its expression in the concept of sustainable development, which emerged in the 1980s and continues to dominate the development discourse at various levels. This unit deals with this concept, an attempt to trace the roots of the concepts of sustainable development in the historical context which gave rise to the development environment debate is made in the first section of this unit. The second section attempts to locate the genesis and traces the evolution of this concept through some of the prominent international events documents. The third section is devoted to the elaborating the concept of sustainable development in terms of its definition, meaning, requirement, policy, objective and strategic measures as conceived in the Brundtland Commission reports, Our Common Future. In the final section, we will make an attempt to understand the criticisms of the concept of sustainable development as well as the future of sustainable development in this globalization era. Now let us discuss sustainable development as historical context. The early roots of the concepts of sustainable development can be traced back to the development environment debate. The economic growth model of the development, its adoption by most of the countries in the world and realization of the consequences it produced in various forms of environmental degradation has provided the historical context for the rise of the development environment debate. The economic growth model of development is characterized by the use of the modern technology, the factory system of the production and rapid industrialization and urbanization. The Western countries initially followed this model of development and prescribed it for the less developed ones. The predominant underlying belief was that the underdeveloped countries would eventually catch up the industrialized countries provided by emulate the economic and social system of the West. The less developed countries adopted the Western model of the development rather uncritically. The consequences of adoption of the Western model of the development by the less developed countries were not all positive. Economic growth occurred, but it was accompanied by a widened gulf between the countries in the north and the south. And it also helped to promote economic disparities between the rich and the poor sections within particular societies. It was realized that the development conceived simply as economic growth was an inadequate notion, and that economic growth does not necessarily lead to the development of the lower strata of the society. This realization caused a shift in the development thinking and eventually led to the inclusion of some additional criteria of the development, such as distributive justice or equality and improvement in the overall quality of life of the masses. Moreover, it is more important to note that the examination of the impact of the Western model of development on the quality of the global environment has led to the critical reconsideration of this model of development. It is realized that reckless pursuit of industrialization and the use of resource exploitative modern technology for development have resulted in environmental deterioration to such an extent that the very existence of all the living species is endangered. There is a great general agreement that the economic expansion, especially during the post-war period, has had alarming consequences for the global environment. Industrialization required a continuous supply of energy and materials from nature. It led to the constant accumulation of waste that resulted from accelerated industrial production and increasing level of consumption. There was a gradual deterioration of nature. The modern industrial form of production induced increasingly severe degrees of social inequality and growing environmental instability and degradation, which together have more recently been conceptualized as the crisis of modernity. The environmental degradation that has occurred is marked by a large-scale extraction of finite natural resources, loss of forest, extinction of animal and plant species, depletion of the ozone layer, water and soil pollution, loss of marine life and biodiversity, etc., have occurred at an alarming rate and have posed a serious threat to the very survival of the life on this planet. While examining the consequences of the Western model of development in the context of ecosystems and economies of developing nations, Sunita Narayan comments that the Western economic and technological model is highly material and energy intensive. It mobilizes huge quantities of natural resources and leaves a trail of toxins with highly degraded and transformed ecosystem in its wake. It is this model that developing nations are also following for economic and social growth, leading to an extraordinary cocktail of poverty and inequality side by side with growing economies, pollution, and large-scale ecological destruction. It is recognized that Western development model in its most triumphant moment appears to be neither desirable nor universally applicable because it is simply not sustainable. Thus, the two basic assumptions of the Western model of development, that is, the first, development could be universalized in space, and second, that it would be durable in time, had lost their validity. Due to the strategies adopted for economic growth, environmental degradation and exploitation of natural resources have become global phenomena. Eventually, the increasing awareness of environmental problems had led to the emergence of environmentalism. It is important to note that environmentalism has added an important dimension to the ongoing development discourse. In fact, it has caused a paradigm shift in our vision of development. It has compelled the intellectuals concerns to think about what is being done to the ecosystem of this planet in the name of development. The worsening environmental situation has led to the re-examination and reconsideration of the policies, strategies, and programs for development. As a result, the environment development debate emerged and became intensified in due course of time. Initially, development and environment were seen as distinctive identities. There was a sharp division between those who supported development over environment and those who argued for environment over development. As another scholar observes, there emerged two different camps of protagonists who inhabited two different mental spaces and regarded themselves as opponents. This gave rise to the dichotomy of the development versus environment. However, eventually there also emerged an increased awareness about the fact that human beings need both development and environment. As Balatumas has expressed, there was a growing recognition that overall goals of environment and development are not in conflict but are indeed the same, namely the improvement of human quality of life or welfare of the present and future generations. Such thinking led to the view that development versus environment is a false dichotomy. This view is well articulated in World Development Report 1992, Development and the Environment. It is argued in this report that the economic development and sound environmental management are complementary aspects of the same agenda. Without adequate environmental protection, development will be undermined. Without development, environmental protection will fall. Income growth will provide the resources for improved environmental management. In fact, such a view underscored the need of reconciliation between the development and the environment. The concept of sustainable development, as defined in the report of the World Commission on Environment and Development titled Our Common Future, represents such an attempt to reconcile the goals of development as well as that of environmental protection. Before we study the definition and meaning of this concept, let us look at its genesis and evolution in next lecture. Thanks for listening. Here we want to close our today's lecture. Thanks again for listening.